I've been making a lot of videos lately. I get a lot of comments, especially about what is the best neighborhood in Calgary, which is the best quadrant, what is the safest area, which areas to avoid, where are the best schools, stuff like that. So I thought I would make a video about this topic and share with you the top neighborhoods in Calgary according to locals. I've scoured the internet and I've got a lot of different responses, and I'll share with you my comments, my thoughts as well. My name is Ryan Gillard with Real Broker, your Calgary Realtor. And if you are thinking about making a move, I want to be your resource, either buying, selling, or relocating to Calgary. All my information is in the written description below. You can call, text, email, comment, check out my website. And I also have a few free guides for you as well, a buyer's guide, a seller's guide, and a relocation guide. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's start off in the Northeast. And I haven't made any videos about the Northeast yet. People are asking me why. I will, I just haven't gotten around to it. These videos do take a while. So I'll start off in the Northeast here. Now, if you do your homework and you research on Google, where are the best parts of Calgary, or is the Northeast a good spot to live in Calgary, you can find some negative comments about the Northeast. And a lot of people just write it off, say, no, Northeast is a bad area, don't move there. I think that's false. There are some good parts of the Northeast. You just have to know kind of where to look. Now, there's a huge section of the Northeast, I would say like Rundle, Marlborough, Pine Ridge, Whitehorn, that kind of area. It all looks very similar to me, and I would say it's very street specific. So you could be driving around those areas and think, oh God, this is not very nice. Then you could pass by another block and it actually looks pretty nice. So it's very street specific. You can't just label it all as a bad area. You just have to kind of know where to look. That's that main section of the Northeast, and there are some standout areas in this part of town. One that comes to mind is Coral Springs. This is the only lake community in the Northeast. In fact, there's only two lake communities in North Calgary altogether. That's Arbor Lake in the northwest and Coral Springs in the northeast. And you can find some properties in Coral Springs that are over $1 million. So it's definitely not a bad area. There are some nice homes in the northeast. Now, if you go further northeast, you'll find a lot of brand new neighborhoods in Calgary, kind of past the airport towards the northwest border of the city. You'll find neighborhoods like Taradale, Saddle Ridge, Redstone, Cornerstone, Skyview. You can find some brand new properties in these areas, and they're quite nice. Now, they look like every other property in the suburban parts of Calgary, whether that be in the northwest, southeast. They're all like the 2 stories, double front detached garages, but they can range in price and they can get up there. I've seen some that are like $800,000 to $1 million in some of these brand new neighborhoods in the northeast. And so you can't just label the entire northeast as a bad part of town. It's not true. Now, if you're asking my opinion, would I spend $1 million to live in the Northeast? Absolutely not. I think if I had $1 million, I would probably buy in the inner city or on the western half of the city. That's just my opinion. And I would say that because I like the scenery of the west part of Calgary. There's more ridges, there's more like hilly terrain and more views of the mountains and stuff like that. Northeast Calgary is generally pretty flat. It's kind of like bald-ass prairie. There's not much to see. There's no rivers or like canals or ridges in the Northeast that I'm aware of. And now I've lived in the Northeast in the past, so I'm quite familiar with it. But I just find there's more scenery on the western half of the city. And there is less crime on the western half of the city as well. I don't think Calgary's a dangerous city, but there's definitely more crime that happens on the northeast part of town versus the other quadrants of the city. And I'll just show you on the map the areas I'm referring to here. So the first area, Coral Springs, this is the lake community I mentioned. That's right over here. We have the airport over here, and the newer areas of town that I mentioned are all on the outskirts of the Northeast. So you got like the Taradale, Saddle Ridge, Cornerstone, Skyview Ranch, Redstone. These are all nicer parts of the Northeast. They're all like brand new. And the areas I referred to earlier that are very street specific, that's like the Whitehorns, Temples, Rundles, Pine Ridge. You could be driving around this area and not know which neighborhood that you're in. They all look very similar. Similar price ranges, similar styles of homes. And you can also include parts of East Calgary. That's this green section over here. Has a very similar feel to like Forest Heights and Marlborough, look very similar to me. The separator here is Memorial Drive. This separates Northeast from East Calgary, but people will generally kind of lump this area into the Northeast as well. And so we'll move on to the next quadrant now. All right, moving along, let's talk about Southeast Calgary. And to clarify, I'm using Krebs community map as the Southeast area, not the mailing address of Southeast Calgary. It's a bit confusing, but I think it's easier to break the city down this way. And I'll show you afterwards what areas I'm referring to on the map. And according to Google, most people are, when we polled this area, are saying that the standout areas are Mahogany and Auburn Bay. definitely two of the finest neighborhoods in Calgary. Now, I didn't hear too much about Quarry Park, which is a part of the Douglasdale neighborhood, one of the coolest spots of Calgary. And there's also a lot of good spots like Mackenzie Lake, Mackenzie Town, and Douglasdale itself, especially along the ridge areas of those neighborhoods. And if you are curious, I actually broke down this entire area, Southeast Calgary, and I have my own video specifically on this region of the city, which you can find right here. And next up, I'll just show you on the map where these areas are. So I'll just show you on the map here. So I didn't mention too much about this green area. This is called East Calgary. This is mainly industrial, so there's not too much to talk about that's different from this northeast section. And the southeast area is this yellow section right over here. So Mahogany and Auburn Bay, these are both lake communities, very popular, lots of sales activity in these areas. Looking at this map, I didn't actually mention Cranston. Specifically, the Riverstone part of this neighborhood is very nice, which you can see from the video in the background. Mackenzie Lake, Douglasdale, especially along the ridge, very nice. Mackenzie Town's always a very popular neighborhood. And Quarry Park is actually part of this Douglas Glen area. Very cool community, very up and coming. It's very unique as well. And that's just a good quick rundown of the southeast area. Again, if you're very curious about this part of town, I have my own specific video on this region. And next up, we'll tackle this big section right over here called South Calgary. All right, let's talk about South Calgary now. And again, we're using Krebs' definition of South Calgary, which actually includes parts of Southeast and Southwest Calgary. I will make a video on this region of the city. It's a huge part of Calgary, and it'll take some time to put it together. And so according to Google, if you do some research, the areas that really stand out in South Calgary is anything kind of around the Glenmore Reservoir. So you've got Eagle Ridge, you've got Bayview, Kelvin Grove, Pump Hill, very nice neighborhoods. And an area that always pops up as one of the best neighborhoods in all of Calgary is Lake Bonavista, one of my favorites. And you can also throw in Willow Park, just north of Lake Bonavista, a golf course community in the south. And this area is a bit easier to describe if I pull up the map here. Okay, so South Calgary is this kind of light brown, kind of peachy color you see here. So it is a big section of the city. And I will show you on the Google Maps what I'm referring to. So this part of town is generally really good. But I'm just talking about like the standout areas of this region of the city. So here is Glenmore Reservoir. And the areas that you saw in the videos beforehand are Eagle Ridge, which is this little neighborhood right here. Very wealthy neighborhood. You got Bayview over here, backing onto the reservoir. Very nice part of town. You've got Kelvin Grove over here and Pump Hill. These are all very nice neighborhoods kind of around the reservoir. And if I zoom out, so Lake Bonavista is down here, one of the most popular parts of Calgary. I didn't mention Canyon Meadows. This is also a very nice neighborhood. Willow Park is the golf course neighborhood right over here, Willow Park. Lots of different subsections of Willow Park, but the video that you saw earlier was on this road right here. Probably the most expensive part of Willow Park. What else do we have? Now, nobody on the internet mentioned Evergreen. So this is a big neighborhood, and I would say like the really nice part of Evergreen is the Evergreen Estates, this section over here. Some of these homes that are backing onto the Fish Creek Park are quite nice. I like Shawnee Slopes, especially the old part of it, this section over here. This part of Shawnee Slopes is a brand new development, so you see lots of new townhouses, condos, and homes, detached homes in this section over here. It was a golf course, but they've turned that into a new development. This part of town is just kind of, I'd say it's quite normal. If we go north a little bit, Woodbine and Woodlands, especially the parts that are backing onto the park as well, can be fairly nice. And as you get further south, this part is all like brand new. Nothing really stands out to me in this part of town. Maybe the stuff in the Chaparral, like backing onto the lake, quite nice. I like Sundance and Midnapore, two more lake communities in this part of town. And that's just a good quick rundown of Southwest Calgary, or South Calgary as Krebs defines it. Nice part of town, and there's no real bad parts of South Calgary. It's most of it's quite average, I would say, but there are definitely some standout neighborhoods that I mentioned earlier. All right, next up, let's talk about the west end of Calgary, or the west side. Probably one of the most desirable parts of the entire city. You've got excellent views of the Rocky Mountains. You've got hills, ridges, luxury homes. This is one of the best parts of Calgary, if not the best. I'm still an inner city person, but after that, I would say the west side is definitely very desirable, one of the best spots in the city. And according to Google, the standout areas of this part of town are Aspen Woods, Springbank Hill, and West Springs. There are a whole bunch of other ones that I couldn't find much on the internet about, but I'll share my thoughts with you, and I'll pull the map to show you where they're at. And before I pull up the map, I should mention that I also made a video specifically on the West End, and I went through every single neighborhood. I broke them down, photos, videos, what I like, what I dislike, and you can find that video right here by clicking the link. So the West End, or the west side of Calgary, is this kind of light orangey section that you see right here. And the areas that I mentioned earlier are Springbank Hill over here, Aspen Woods, and West Springs, very high-end neighborhoods. Discovery Ridge looks like you're in the mountains, very nice area as well. I didn't hear much about this part of town on the internet. Patterson is one of my favorite neighborhoods. It kind of reminds you of like a ski bowl where you're kind of pressed up against the ridge. It's a very cool part of town. Strathcona Park, Christie Park, you can't go wrong. This whole area is very nice. I'd also say Wildwood is a very high-end neighborhood, especially some of the homes that are backing onto the ridge of the Bow River Valley. Super nice. And I would say that even though Killarney is technically in the inner city, I feel it's more of like a west side neighborhood. I would mention Killarney is also very nice. And again, you can't really go wrong with this part of town. And while we're here, I'll also touch on the Northwest. It's actually kind of similar. Maybe not quite as expensive as the west side, but not far off. And some of the standout neighborhoods that I've seen online are the Tri-Wood areas. So that's Brentwood, Charleswood, Collingwood. These are at the base of Noah Hill Park, and they're very forested, as the name suggests. Very mature, lots of mature trees. Very nice part of town. I like Varsity a lot. Even though I didn't see much about Varsity online, I think this is one of the best neighborhoods in Calgary. Very close to the university. And Varsity Estates, this section over here, is one of the finest neighborhoods in the city. And actually, I'll go back. I didn't hear much about Lakeview online, but Lakeview Village especially is a very high-end part of the city. Backs onto like the park and the reservoir area. But back to the Northwest, so Varsity Estates, super high-end part of Calgary. Other parts of the Northwest, Edgemont, one of my favorite neighborhoods of Calgary. Huge neighborhood. You've got lots of different subsections. You've got areas that have views of the downtown and the whole city. You've got parts of it that back onto valleys and ridges. Very, very nice part of Calgary. The Hamptons, one of the luxury golf course neighborhoods of Calgary. Also very nice. Silver Springs and Scenic Acres. Some of the areas that back onto the ridge that you can see views of like COP and the River Valley, quite nice. Gets a bit newer as you go further northwest. I think Rocky Ridge is a very nice, especially the new parts of Rocky Ridge can be quite nice. And Tuscany is also very popular. Even though I haven't read much online about Tuscany, it's a very desirable part of Calgary. Lots of different subsections in this part of town as well. And that's a good rundown of the Northwest and the West Side. These are the most desirable parts of Calgary outside of the inner city. And I also have a specific Northwest video, which you can find right here, that'll go through the entire region of the Northwest and break it all down for you. Now, the last area that I'll touch on here before going into the inner city is this teal area right here, north central Calgary. Now, this part of town, especially this section over here, it's not fantastic, it's not bad, it's just very typical. There's no neighborhoods in here that really stand out to me as being like very, very desirable. That's not bad again, just very normal part of town. And this part of the Northwest is all newer developments. I think maybe Evanston is a good standout area. It's more developed than some of the stuff that's currently being built. Again, not a bad area, but not fantastic. It's just very normal, I would say. And last on our list, let's tackle the inner city, my personal favorite part of Calgary. And this is one of the first videos I made was actually on this topic, my inner city guide to Calgary, which you can find right here. I went to every single neighborhood. I got photos, videos. I broke it all down, what I like, what I dislike. And it's a great guide if you are thinking of making a move to the inner city. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what the public thinks are the best parts of the inner city. And you get the usual suspects like the Hillhurst, the Kensington area, so Hillhurst, West Hillhurst, Sunnyside. You hear about Altadore, which is the Marda Loop area, maybe Inglewood, and Mount Royal. Now, those are always on the top of most lists that you see online. Now, if the public is anything like myself, I knew about the main areas of the downtown, like the Beltline, the inner core, like Kensington areas. But there are a lot of small neighborhoods in Calgary, in the inner city, that are quite nice, that the public probably doesn't know too much about because they are very expensive. And not everybody has $2 or $3 million to buy on a property. So the areas I mentioned are definitely good, but there are others as well, which I'll show you on the map. All right, so for the inner city, it's this kind of purplish section right here. The areas that I mentioned is the Kensington area, which is Sunnyside, Hillhurst, West Hillhurst, that section right over here. The Beltline is this section right here. This is the heart of the city. This is where all like the condos are, all the restaurants and bars and stuff like that. Mount Royal is right here, Upper Mount Royal, and the Altadore area is over here. These are the areas, and actually, where are we here? Inglewood is right over here. Inglewood and Ramsey. Those are the areas that are always popping up on these Google searches I've been running on the top areas. But there's a whole bunch that people didn't mention. So I'll just start here from the north and work my way down into the south part of the inner city. So this huge section up here, like the Winston Heights, Tuxedo, Mount Pleasant, Capitol Hill, Banff Trail, this is great for people that want to live, somewhat close to downtown, but still be residential. This is all like mostly detached properties, great for developers. All these infills, like these old bungalows, are prime for turning into infill properties. And it's not that far of a commute from downtown, maybe to downtown, maybe 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, depending on traffic. Again, we already mentioned the Kensington areas. I didn't hear much about Rosedale. This is one of the nicer areas of the city. Same with Crescent Heights, especially along the ridge. You've got probably the best view of downtown from the Rosedale and Crescent Heights ridge area. Renfrew is also quite nice. Bridgeland is also a good area if you want to be walking distance to downtown. A lot of condo developments here. East Village is an up-and-coming area. Eau Claire is kind of older, fancy condominium developments. Good spot. You got the Princess Island Park and the downtown core right over here. Scarborough, I didn't hear much about Scarborough. Again, I didn't even know this area existed until I got into real estate. This is kind of like 1900s mansions, so it's a very unique part of the downtown. I would definitely live in Scarborough if I had the money to do so. We've already mentioned the Marda Loop area, which is Altadore. Now, this entire section right here, I would say most Calgarians don't know about all these little tiny pockets. Like you've got Roxborough, Rideau Park, Britannia, Alboya. These are all super fancy. These are homes that are backing onto the Elbow River. This whole chunk of Calgary, I would say this is the most expensive part of the city right in here. So Elbow Park is kind of similar to Mount Royal. And then all these tiny pockets in here are really high-end neighborhoods backing onto the river. And lastly, you've got the Bel Air Mayfair, really expensive pocket in here as well. These homes are just huge mansions, a very nice part of the city. And this section over here is kind of just industrial. So it looks like it's a big area, but it's not really. This is more just shopping, I would say. And again, we've got Inglewood is the oldest neighborhood in Calgary, and a very hip neighborhood. Lots of cool restaurants and shops in this neighborhood. And that's just a good quick rundown of the inner city. It's a very unique part of Calgary. Again, any questions at all, you can see my video specifically on the inner city. Well, there you go. That's my rundown of the top neighborhoods in Calgary, according to locals, with my extra analysis in there as well. I hope you liked it. What are your favorite neighborhoods? Let me know in the comments. And again, if you are thinking about making a move, I want to be your resource. You can call, text, email, comment, and I also have my free downloadable guides as well. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.